Hi. All right. I didn't know I was going to be first, but anyway, I know you're all here to be educated and inspired and entertained tonight. So I'm going to be sure to tell Phil that. Phil, educate, entertain, inspire. Charles got that covered. I think we got some entertainment over here, and I have. This is not a script. This is a prop. It's a fine book, by the way. If you would like to be a better father, look no further. And it's very large, it's very square, and it's good for spinning. So, let's see, where were we? Nazi line cook. I'm going to tell you tonight about a little episode in my life called Angelo's Nationally Famous Pizzeria. It was called Angelo's Nationally Famous because that's what they wrote on the matchbooks. And I lived in this little episode in my life, I lived in a place which for the purposes of this story I'm going to call Ski Town, USA. In Ski Town, USA, on the main drag on Elk Avenue, there was Angelo's Nationally Famous Pizzeria with red and black matchbooks that said that. Presumably, everyone stuck those matchbooks in their pockets and took them back to wherever they were from, making the place nationally famous. So, I ended up there in the early 90s as a college graduate with a strong determination to pursue a career in the service industry, as you do. And the arrival in Angelo's, and the story of getting there itself is a fantastic story which I call farces, and I'm not going to tell that story tonight, but I'll save it for another time. I got to Angelo's Nationally Famous and pursued the beginning of my, I suppose I worked my way up the hierarchy. If you don't know anything about the hierarchy of a pizza restaurant, the lowest you can go is washing dishes. That's as low as it gets. I was a dishwasher at Angelo's Nationally Famous, and my first day on the job, Bob, who was the Nazi line cook, had a go at me about ramekins. Does anyone know what a ramekin is? A ramekin is, yes, it's a lovely little dishy type thing that you put sauces in. Now, Bob the line cook, he loved his ramekins and he ran out of them all the time. And first I got to tell you about his domain. Bob was a master of his domain, and his domain was about this long and about this wide, and about 6 flaming hot afterburners of gas cookware behind us, condiments, steam table, sauces, accoutrements, ramekins, lots of them, and lots of dishes and all sorts of things. Bob wouldn't let anybody cross the line. A line cook, if you've ever met a line cook, they can be a little territorial about their domain. And if anyone came anywhere close to him, he would hit them, literally, hit them with something. And he was a big fan of throwing spatulas. If you've ever tried to dodge a spatula covered in pizza sauce, or a ladle, or a flying ramekin of all things, it's not as easy as it looks. The flying spatula tended to scatter pizza sauce like blood stains all over everything, and he got upset a lot. Bob didn't like people crossing his territory, and the brunt of his anger usually fell upon the dishwasher. The dishwasher was an easy target because he or she was always there, and I was it. The waitresses came and went, and the other things were happening all over the place, but the dishwasher was always there, and there was always a good reason for him to yell something along the lines of, I wish he had a Tennessee accent. Now, a while back ago, I told a story of another boss I used to have, whose favorite thing to say was, God damn, Barr! But Bob didn't talk like that because my last name is Barr. Because he was more of an aging hippie. Now at that time he was about as old as I am now, or younger, but at the time he seemed very, very old. And he would get in the heat of the moment, in the rush, and say, "Ramekins! I need 10 ramekins, stat!" Stat? What kind of line cook says stat? Like he's a surgeon on the trauma ward or something. Ramekins! And he would throw things at his favorite target, Mike Barr, the Hobart technician. So I was dodging things, and I think a line cook like Bob, he wasn't actually Nazi, but he did run his show kind of that way. He was totalitarian. He certainly was totalitarian. He was a dictator of sorts in this little area, and he tended to take the new guy and beat on him, not physically, sort of metaphorically and physically throw ramekins and spatulas at the new guy and kind of beat him into submission. I think the way to get his respect sort of began with taking his shit and ended with understanding him. Now, understanding a person like that is a little tricky, but the path to understanding Bob kind of meandered through prep cooking. Bob loved his Parmesan cheese. Now, I might get to this again later, but this wasn't powdered Parmesan cheese. This was the real deal. This was Parmesan cheese. It's like gold to a man like Bob. And bringing him all the Parmesan cheese he wanted, freshly grated, when he needed it, where he needed it, that was a good path to his heart. Keeping his ramekins coming and sorted in little piles was a good way to get in there with Bob. And he really wanted, like most of us, wanted understanding. Sometimes we don't get that. But Bob took me under his wing eventually once I seethed with rage for a few weeks, and then started doing what he wanted. People like this also don't necessarily say what they want. I know, because I'm like this now. I assume that my wife and all the people around me are going to read my mind and intuit what I need them to do. And then I'll yell at them something about ramekins once in a while. And Bob eventually took me under his wing. He trained me in the fine art of pizza spinning. Now, I love spinning pies. It's one of my favorite things to do, and if you're a teacher, as I am sometimes, it's a great thing to do in a class. As you can see, everybody pays attention when you're spinning something. Like, when is it gonna fall? How does he do it? Where did you learn it? What's the secret? See, look, I don't even have to watch. I learned how to spin pies, and I think I've mentioned this before, but a secret to success in all of life is learn how to be good at something. And by spinning pies, Bob promoted me from this side of the line to this side of the line. And I spun pies with the best of them. I loved spinning pies. It's a very... Occasionally you drop one, but when you don't, it's a beautiful thing. And it's nice to throw it with one hand and catch it with the pie, catch it with the pan, flip it over here, throw another one, roll it. It's a very flashy job, and it happens right at the front of the restaurant. So if you run a pizzeria, I highly recommend training some no-goodnik like me to throw pies really well and put them where everybody can see them. Because it doesn't get much better than throwing pies in the air. It's very traditional. It's not a machine-operated type of thing. And we threw the pies, we made the pies, we stuck the pies in the oven, and the line cook was the boss of the whole show, orchestrating everything like a little less like a Nazi and more like a maestro on a good day. On a bad day, you might catch a spatula the wrong way. The happy family of Angelo's nationally famous pizzeria was a little dysfunctional, and it was a little quirky, and there were lots and lots of characters in there. I would love to tell a story about every single one of them. Paulie, the prep cook, was meticulous in his little way, and he taught me things about counting out loud when you make the rice. I still do it to this day, so I don't lose count. How many of you have lost count of the number of rice scoops in the machine? And then the new age floor manager taught a lot of people a lot of things about a lot of things. And she was that was vague. Rachel, the floor manager, I'd like to touch on her just briefly, metaphorically. That's a different story, and I'm not telling that one tonight. The floor manager, now part of the thing, if you want to make the good money in a pizza restaurant or in any restaurant in Ski Town, USA, you need to charm people and you need to do service with the people. And one thing that she was really good at was she was the master of the short conversation, the short meaningful conversation. Now, I wanted to make the tips, and I wanted to make the money, and I wanted to be the center of attention, so I spun pies. I tended the bar at the front, and I learned from Rachel, who tried to reinvent herself, and it didn't work. She changed her name to Rochelle. But she would take things with her, take something both directions. Here's your pizza, sir. Can I take that for you? Thank you very much. And it's very nice. That's a lovely shirt you're wearing. I really like your watch. And things like this, and she tended to have these very brief, meaningful conversations with every single person she saw. And everything you need to know about Rachel Rochelle was pretty much summed up in crystals and dream catchers and flowing hippie skirts and things like this. But she was the perfect foil to Bob, because she was love and sunshine and happiness, and he was rage and anger and control. And these two ends of the spectrum at Angelo's Nationally Famous rubbed off on everyone around them. And after work, we would gather in the bar like soldiers home from the wars, because this was on the main street, and hundreds of people went through this place every night. And we would have drinks and frou-frou cocktails and tell funny stories about the crazy people we served that evening, and it was all friendly and peaceful and happy at the end. In the middle of the thing, it was just a crazy maelstrom of activity, and somewhere in there, all 20 or 30 of us working in the place were trying desperately to find ourselves and to find each other and to figure out what the hell was going on. We were all, and I look at it now, because I'll be 44 in a day or two, and I look at it now, and we were all in our 20s and in our 30s running a restaurant and trying to figure out what was going on and teaching things and learning things, and confused idealists and seekers. And like every family, Angelo's had a dark side. It had a black sheep. The restaurant was owned by a guy named Charles, and it was run by Bob and Rochelle. And Charles very rarely entered the picture because he was such a grumpy old guy, and we never knew why he was so grumpy until his son came back to town and tried to run the restaurant into the ground. The son was a junkie. He had a little time under his belt, I think, and when he came back, things got real dark around there. And after a few years, now this happened after I moved on, because I wasn't going to stay in the service industry for too long. I needed to travel the world and end up here, which is why you have me here tonight talking to you. The restaurant closed a couple of years after I was gone, because Brian's downward spiral sucked everything into it like a black hole, and I think the restaurant sold for the price of a 28-day stint at Betty Ford. But when it was all said and done, I think there was a real pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, because Rochelle learned that she couldn't reinvent herself and traded in her hippie skirts for a career in the real estate industry. And Bob went back to school and got a teaching certificate so he didn't feel so thwarted and useless and stuck in his kitchen. Paulie, the prep cook, who I very briefly mentioned, took a late model American car and drove off into the sunset towards Indiana with his 17-year-old bride. I've continued traveling the world and ended up here. And we kept this in our hearts. Most of us that had time there kept it as a real golden age, a perfect little period of our lives, with archetypes and with dramas and with beautiful experiences, and most of us, I hope, came away with a few skills which we can still do to this day and remember when we think back on Ski Town, USA, and Angelo's nationally famous pizzeria. Thank you very much.